Welcome to another episode of Homeschool Moms Unfiltered. I'm your host, Megan, and my amazing co-host is...
Hey, I'm Amanda.
Hello there. We are a haven in the homeschool world for those who are sick of influencers only showing the highlight reel of their life. For homeschoolers who want to gouge their eyes out if they have to read one more post about Story of the World and the good and the beautiful. We are 100% secular here. We are a haven for homeschoolers who are seeking a sane space from those who pound their fists on their chests while spouting pro-life Bible verses, but then vote for a man who vows to wipe an entire country off the map on his faux Twitter.
So I think you've left no doubt about who our target audience is. But listen, gone are the days of people homeschooling solely because they want to bubble their children away from the evils of the secular world. You no longer have to be a good conservative Christian or have enough children to drive a small school bus around in order to homeschool, right? People homeschool now for all kinds of reasons. Your child might need more differentiated education than a brick and mortar school can provide. That might be a result of giftedness or another form of neurodivergence. Your school system might be teaching things like slavery was good job skill training and Columbus absolutely discovered America. And you might be like, yeah, thanks, but also no thanks. I'll take it from here.
Yeah, I love that when it's like, are you qualified to teach your kids? And I'm like, have you seen some of the stuff that gets taught? And okay. Yeah. But anyway, I mean, for me personally, I am smart enough to realize that hiding under a desk with your hands over your head isn't going to do a damn thing when there's a spray of bullets coming at you from an automatic weapon. So I'm going to bring my babies home and I'll take it from here. Thank you. But then beyond reasons like those that first bring people into the homeschooling fold, so many people fall in love with the awesomeness of not starting your day like you've been shot out of a cannon, or being able to travel during the school year when everything's cheaper and less crowded, being able to hand select resources that fit your kid. Homeschooling can be pretty freaking amazing.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's it, right? There are so many awesome and amazing things about being homeschoolers. But that said, we are also very real around here. We don't like to hide our days that end in tears or utter exhaustion that comes from the never ending, never having enough hours in the day. Because the thing is, you'll likely experience those things from time to time, just like we do. And we want you to know that this is common. You're not alone. We love homeschooling. We love going through life with our respective kids. But like most other things in life, it has its ups and downs. And truly, that is okay.
Yeah, it's part of life. I mean, I've been sharing lately that I've been somewhat overwhelmed with juggling all of the things that the kids needed sorted for both summer activities and then fall planning. And there's just a lot of logistics, and everything has its own form and its own application and its own this. And then I have to call and ask a question and I'm waiting for an answer. And it's just a lot. And I feel like, especially because summer and fall quite literally are back to back. I mean, that seems so obvious, but it's not like if you're planning for the fall, you have a really long time until you have to plan again because some stuff, but it's like summer and fall, you really can't wait till like midsummer to plan something for fall. You don't really get that option. Everything just needs to be done at one time. So everything's due at once, and there's deposits and schedules, and this is overlapping and who's going where and when and all of that, but it's winding down. But yeah, the ebb and flow is real.
Well, and that's just it. And actually, it's a great segue into our topic for today, because we are going to be discussing this mindset, I guess you could say, that can be quite pervasive in the homeschool world, or sometimes from your sphere of influence, who are maybe conditionally supportive of the fact that you're homeschooling. And like, look, okay, you're homeschooling now when they're little, and that's great. It's super cute. I love that for you. But you are going to send them back to like real school for high school, right? I mean, How often have we heard this or some
Yeah.
take on this? Maybe they're not always a valley girl. My husband was definitely not a valley girl when he was like, I mean, obviously he's going back to school for high school, right? And like, back to school. Like, what do you think he's doing at home? Like, he's like, it's not like he just took off the first 14 years of his life and then he's going to go back to school. So we're going to talk today. Where did this mindset come from? Is there any validity to it? And the big one that we hear a lot, can you homeschool high school?
Yeah. Well, I mean, to your point about my logistical overwhelm of late leading into our topic of the week so nicely, I can answer that question for you very nicely because I have and did and am homeschooling high school. My kids are 18, almost 17 in about a week, and 14, but at the start of the traditional school year time for this year, he will be 15. And Amanda is happily homeschooling a tween with no plans of stopping in sight, despite her husband's random curiosities there. So she'll be homeschooling high school before she realizes it as well. And so I'm excited to dig into this one for today. I think it's going to be good. But first, before we do that, we start off all of our episodes with a weekly recap. It's kind of part of our keeping it real vibe around here because we'll tell you the highlights and the stuff that most influencers would bury deep in a dark hole and never share because their life is so perfect. But we'd rather give you an accurate picture than highlight reel. So what's new in your world, Amanda?
Well, so the biggest thing I've talked before about how we homeschool through a public charter school here in California, and it's its own unique system. And generally, it worked well for us, especially when my kiddo was younger, and we were able to apply the instructional funds, the government money, depending on who you're talking to and what comments you're reading. So we were able to apply those to his weekly drop-off class. And so it really helped with our budgeting and made homeschool more affordable for us. And the trade-offs were there. One of the biggest trade-offs for those instructional funds is required state standardized testing. And we do get to do it from home. So that is nice. At least, there are a few places that require the kids go in person to the computer lab and do it. But most of the charter schools I know of allow you to do it from home. But for us, the kids have very specific windows that they have to do the testing in with set start times. For us, it was 9 a.m. And they have to be on Zoom. And the testing software is installed on a specific computer that they have to use, technically a Chromebook. And it records both them. There's a recording of what they're doing and everything they say and everything they type on their computer during the testing to make sure that they didn't cheat and yada, yada, yada. And so there's all of this, but then also if your kiddo doesn't do well, it's pretty much guaranteed that they will be required to take classes through the school in the coming year.
Oh,
So it's not like some states where people are like, oh, you can do the standardized test and then just file it away. It doesn't matter. It's very controlled. Your kiddo has to do it on their own. They're not allowed to ask you questions because that all gets recorded, and they have to do well, or they are required to take these kind of remediation classes or something like that to help make sure that they are at grade level, blah, 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 blah. So it's not one of those like standardized tests where you just get to blow it off. And I can tell my kiddo over and over and over and over that I don't care about the results because he generally tests well. We've talked about it before, he's gifted and all of this kind of stuff. So even if he had a really epically horrible day, there's just like no scenario where he's going to be lower than 80%. So I really don't care, but it's still stressful for him. Right.
yeah.
So yesterday was the last day of CASP testing for us, and I'm glad it's done.
Surprised you didn't bring a beer with you to record. Yeah. Like, or margarita or something.
If I wasn't worried about the combination of like my brain fog that I'm dealing with because of my chronic illness flare and what alcohol does to that, I totally would have. But this episode would have made no sense at all by the end. Like, I don't know, she's saying words, but none of them actually go together to form anything coherent. But, I mean, it's just that thing, like there's so much anxiety and dread from my kiddo. And then the tears, mostly him, but let's be real, partly me. Because, the reality is like sometimes the frustration and the big feelings, like they just leak out of your eyes. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
It is what it is. So yeah, I'm really thankful that that's over, and we're just trying to like regroup and get back to generally enjoying homeschool.
Mhm.
I will say, on a more positive note, I did get my portion of the shorter ebook done. So we're working on that, and that gets put together with the rest of the hands on stuff. So I get the first part of it done and back to Megan, and I'm making good progress. I won't claim that I'm anywhere close to done with it, but I'm making good progress on proving the final massive book part. So yay to tackling at least a few things on my endless to-do list. Oh, and we did attend a science fair just right before CASP took over our lives. So that was fun. It set up like a traditional public school science fair where kids did different projects and stuff. And so it's fun to be able to go and see that and experience it from the homeschooler perspective. My kiddo had absolutely no interest in participating himself and making a project. But yeah, I think the exposure was good.
Yeah.
So anyway, what do you have going on in your life? What's happening there?
Oh my goodness. What is going on in my life? Well, we finally filed our taxes, which is good since this is airing after tax day. I almost got divorced in the process. So much so
Exes.
that, yeah, I'm telling you. There was an episode of Everybody Loves Raymond way back when where Raymond's brother Robert is getting married and his fiance tasks him with doing invitations. And he's kind of grumbling about that. And Raymond's like, no, 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 no. I'm going to tell you the secret. He's like, you do it so badly that she never asks you to do anything ever again. And so that's what they do, except they accidentally get mailed out that way.
Mm.
And so, like, her parents' names are Henry and Patricia, and they put like Hank and Pat on the thing. And then instead of black tie optional, it says clothing optional, but they went out. And
Uh,
so, of course, it's a comedy. So she finds out, and then he's like, but Raymond told me to. And it comes out, it's this whole thing. And I swear, I think I'm married to Raymond. I swear. Oh my God. So, anyway, the other day after they were filed, we did it on Zoom because we're not in the same country. He's working elsewhere. And I started like, blah, 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 blah. And he's like, okay, I get it. And I go, I don't think you do because it's been 20 years, but I'm tired of having this conversation and I'm going to bed. And that was it. I was done. The next day I got one of those texts where like they know that they're in trouble. And it was like, hi, with a smiley face. And I was like, I'm not fucking answering that. So yeah. Anyway,
you know where
my
you can shove that smiley face?
right,
I have some
exactly.
ideas.
Yeah. So yeah, that was that. My huge planning of summer and fall stuff is winding down, but that actually fits into our topic for today. So we're going to talk about that more later. I said that I was going to start my yoga with Adrian program and I shared it here for accountability. Got a yoga mat, got blocks, haven't started. So that's a work in progress still. But I do have a cool update that is cool for me, but I think it's going to just infuriate parents of ADHD kids in America. But I'm going to say it out loud anyway, because I'm pretty pumped about it. So ADHD meds are nearly impossible to get, especially stimulant meds, because they're so widely abused and somehow they can never seem to make enough. I don't know what the problem is. I feel like somebody needs to go over there and be like, so if we're always short, how could we produce more? But anyway, in the US, if you do not know, stimulant meds are a controlled substance. They're C2, which is the highest legal category of controlled medications. C1s are cocaine and stuff like that. So C2s are the next one down. The only way to get a C2 from your doctor is the doctor has to send the prescription directly to the pharmacy through like this encrypted software program. And it's specific to that pharmacy. So if the pharmacy is out, you then have to go back to the doctor and go, oh, can you try sending it to this pharmacy? And then this process can sometimes repeat itself. And if you live in Florida, where I lived before, Florida pharmacies, because of the massive OxyContin issue and fentanyl issue, they do not give inventory levels over the phone. So you can't call your Walgreens and be like, do you have this medication? Oh, great. I'll have the doctor send the prescription there. No, you just have to randomly choose pharmacies over and over and over again, hoping they have them. A lot of times I had luck at the hospital pharmacy systems. And so I would do that. And that was a little bit better, but it was a nightmare. I cried on more than one occasion. And you can only get 30 days at a time. And then when the 30 days is winding down, you can't refill it early because the insurance won't pay for it early. And you'll look like a drug seeking parent. So you can't refill it early from that perspective. You can really only start working on it in that last week of the month, which means during that last week of the 30-day cycle, You spend an inordinate amount of time organizing this. So when we came to Portugal, you can fill 6 months at a time and they hand you a prescription and you can take it to any pharmacy you want. And you can go from pharmacy to pharmacy to pharmacy until you find it, because it can be hard to find them here sometimes too. Sometimes I do great and I can get all 6 months at once. Sometimes not so much. This month was a not so much when I needed to refill again. But they have this phone number here that's also a website now that is a national registry. And you go on the website and you give it your information and you put the prescription number in it because it's all linked to this national system. And then you tell it what medication it is and you tell it what municipality you live in. And they go find the medication for you, put it on hold automatically for 24 hours, and then email you to tell you where to go. So I was able to get 3 of the 6 bottles that I have a prescription for. And I'm like, okay, maybe by summer people will be traveling and stuff. Maybe it'll get a little bit better. I mean, it still took a lot of time and energy this week because before I did the phone number thing, I did go to multiple pharmacies around my house and see if I could get it ordered and all that. But once I was like, oh my gosh, like what a world of difference infrastructure makes. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and that is a good example of how a linked system can be used to help the people.
Right.
Unlike the SAVE Act and the registry that they're trying to put together there, or that they've already put together and that they're wanting to use to disenfranchise a bunch of people. But, like, whatever. I digress. I shouldn't put that on you. I digress.
Oh, but yeah, I was like, this is the greatest thing ever, you know? And it's funny because within the European system, Portugal is always like, oh, it's Portugal, good luck. And even still, look at the systems that are in place. It's just amazing. So anyway, okay, back to our topic for the day. Let's talk about homeschooling high school and this idea that floats around in the homeschool space pretty commonly, that there's this magical moment when your child turns about 13 where suddenly you are no longer qualified to educate your child. You've raised a whole human being for 13 years, and now it's all over because apparently you can't teach algebra. So we're not entirely sure where and when this came from, but you'll send them back to real school for high school. When did this thing start? But we have a few theories. So one of our theories is that in the old school system of homeschooling, which I visualize sometimes, I'm like, can you imagine homeschooling before the internet or before Facebook? Because Facebook is how so many groups connect and events are set up and all that, where you get advice and all of that. But before that time, you would have had much more limited access to curriculum. You wouldn't have had online classes. You wouldn't have had virtual co-ops. You would have been limited to what was around you, and just fewer community options in general. And they'd be harder to find because right now I love to tease the algorithm. If I'm looking for something, Amanda and I have done this even for work stuff. Like when we decided to put out a book ages ago, we totally started Googling it and then just sat back and waited a week. And it's like, oh, let's see what the algorithm gives us. My whole feed was just filled with here's tips and resources on how to put out a book. And I was like, great. I opened all of them. I right-clicked all of them and opened them and just let them sit there for about a week. I collected them. And then when I was ready, I went through all of them. So I didn't even have to go find the stuff. The algorithm sucks. Big tech sucks on so many levels, but it's not going anywhere. So at least I'm using it to my favor in those cases. And parents in the olden days of homeschooling wouldn't have had that option.
Well, yeah, I mean, you had exactly the number of resources available in your local library. Like,
my book club that I teach on OutSchool, we just finished reading The Women, which is set during the Vietnam era and the period just after. And in it, one of the characters calls information. And I had to explain it to my students.
yeah.
And they were like, so you could just call this person and be like, find me a tire shop. And I was like, yeah, it was like human Google, but very limited. You know, they were cracking up.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. I'll have to explain that one to my kiddo.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think all of those things that you brought up, they make sense. Although the great irony is that perpetuating the mindset that they need to go back for high school contributes to the lack of community options for older homeschoolers. But I think we'll talk about that a little later. So I'll get off that soapbox for right now. But beyond that, I think there's also some cultural conditioning that might be at play. I'm thinking things like high school is when learning has to get serious. You need to be more serious, more studious. Or that thing you mentioned, like you might not be able to teach algebra, but that certainly doesn't mean you don't have access to curriculum with teachers' guides or tutors or online classes or programs. in some communities, there are even actual community providers for in-person classes for those kinds of things. So it's not like, well, just because you personally can't teach it, there's no way to help your kiddo with it. And I think that a lot of it comes back to this idea that homeschoolers don't socialize. So surely our kids will miss out on opportunities like prom and Friday night football. Like, never mind the fact that they can still attend those things with their friends, either at local public schools or private schools. There's nothing saying like you can't come to Friday night football if you don't go to this school. You can absolutely do that, or within the homeschool community. Like,
Yeah.
I know one of your
There's
kiddos
tons of
was
proms.
super stoked, yeah, to attend prom with
Yeah.
friends. Like,
Mhm.
it's not that like, well, their only option is to be in this specific type of socialization. I think another thing that comes up that's again kind of this like cultural identity thing is that transcripts are treated almost like a sacred document. Look, we have covered this at length in so many different episodes, and Megan offers personalized transcript coaching sessions if you need reassurance, actually even help you like actually build the transcript. But the reality is a transcript is just a piece of 8.5 by 11 printer paper. It's not that crazy big thing that we sometimes make it out to be in our minds. You can create it and it will count, just like homeschool kids can easily go on to college if that's what they want to do. Like,
Mhm.
these are not these like big, impossible to put together or achieve things, no matter how much some people might like us to believe.
Well, and I think it's cultural conditioning, but also then you have the evil giant HSLDA. That's their new scare tactic, is that your transcripts and diplomas won't get accepted. Because there was like one kid in Idaho who wanted to go to beauty school and she had trouble submitting her paperwork and they gave her a hard time. And so now they're lobbying Congress and raising money and all this kind of stuff. And it's been in all these groups, like homeschoolers, things aren't being accepted. I'm like, this is not a wide scale. This is what they do, is raise money for lobbying through scare tactics. So it's cultural conditioning, but then it's also
Well,
their evil plotting.
I mean, in fairness, that is also cultural conditioning, especially for
True.
Americans. Our entire government is for sale through lobbyists and even more so just through our current elected
Mhm.
administration and all of the people that they've put in place. So,
Yeah.
I mean, eh.
Yeah. But transcripts are not scary. I'm happy to help you. They're built up as this big scary thing in so many homeschool discussions that I see. And I was a part of that in the sense that when I had to do my first one, I was so nervous. But like so many other things, it's like once I got in there and started doing it, I was like, this is it. This is what people are so worked up over. This is not hard. This is not scary. It's super straightforward. So yeah, don't get your panties in a twist over it. It's okay. It's super okay. Another thing that I think might be leading to the mindset that you can't possibly homeschool high school is just in general, we have this societal trust in institutions. And for so many people, school brings legitimacy to the table in a way that we apparently cannot in our own minds sometimes. School offers credibility. And when in reality, that's one pathway and that works for many people and that's fine and that's great. But it doesn't make your pathway less valid. It's totally fine. And your kid will be great.
I think that's the thing. We talk about deschooling so often around here and in basically every course and coaching session. And we have a whole episode about it. So if you're new to homeschooling and then you're like, definitely go check it out. But also, if you're entering into a new phase of homeschooling and you find yourself, I don't know, kind of falling into some of these societal expectations of like what should happen or what you need. And it's centering school and kind of this one legitimate path forward. It might be a good idea to go revisit the deschooling thing or redo our Homeschool 101 course and really get back to like, okay, this is what we're doing and this is why we're doing it. And these are the things we're letting go of in this new phase, because the idea that you can't successfully homeschool the high school level is something that could really use some dismantling. You absolutely can do it. And when you're truly doubting that, or you feel like specific guidance would be beneficial. Like we can help, whether it's, like I said, whether it's specific coaching or redoing the 101 course or coming to a Patreon Q&A and being like, I'm not sure. Like, yeah, please don't get stuck in that holding pattern. There's no need.
I shared once before, I called my best friend one day when I was super stressed. It was when we were moving to Europe. And I called her and was like, I just need you to tell me it's going to be okay. And I cried and I brain dumped. And she was like, it's going to be okay. And I felt better. Sometimes you just need to show up to a meeting that other people are at who have a similar experience or expectation. And they're going to go, you've got this. And it's so silly, but it works. It really, really works. So come, we'll do that thing. It helps. Trust me.
I mean, that's it. We, again, talk about it so often, but it's that fear that plagues so many homeschool parents, the fear that we are failing our kids or that we're going to fail our kids.
Mm-hmm.
And again, we totally get that. If you're new to homeschooling, we can both reassure you that it does get better over time. You see it working time and time again. You see your kids proving these amazing things and sharing things that make you just go like, okay, it's totally working. And it just firms up your resolve. We promise it happens with time. But that said, even long-term homeschoolers have those periods where the doubt creeps in and you find yourself wondering, like, have I completely screwed this all up? Was this the wrong choice? Will they be doomed in life because of me? And when it comes to homeschooling high school, those questions specifically sound like, have I completely messed up their future? Will they ever get into college? Will they have the skills and the knowledge they need to, I don't know, adult at all? Will it be a failure to launch situation? These questions and these fears, they don't mean that you're doing it wrong. They mean you're normal. And I know we don't like to use that term, but there's something to be said for just being like everyone else. And like, it's just, it happens and that's okay. Look, I'm rarely looking for anyone to call me normal. I really prefer not to have someone call me normal, but it's nice to know that you aren't alone.
Yeah, absolutely. But we keep saying it because it's important that, you know, if you're here taking the time to listen to a podcast, if you're reading books, if you're doing online courses, all that kind of stuff, and your whole goal in doing those things is to learn how to best educate your kids and prepare them for the real world, we already know that you care enough to do the best by your children. And at that rate, we're pretty darn sure you're not going to fail them because you care. Anytime you've got a parent that's determined as hell, they're unstoppable. Have you seen that meme that's like a worried mother does more research than the FBI or something like that? It's kind of that concept. So you absolutely have what it takes to homeschool high school and prepare them to launch into the world as successful young adults. I say successful, they're going to have blips. One of my kids just put dishwashing liquid into the dishwasher a few weeks ago. So these things happen, but we've all done things like that. So it's okay. That doesn't mean you failed. But I think there's no way you could possibly successful homeschool high school thing also originates from a different time. I mean, I have oodles of homeschooling high school experience. And yes, it's work and it's logistics. And we'll talk about that in much more detail in a little bit. But I'm envisioning my life right now and what my kids need. And I'm thinking, if I had to do all of this back in the days of Prodigy Internet and dial-up AOL, it would have been so much harder. Not impossible, because even back in the 1900s, as young people like to say now, you could still implement the old, like, when there's a will, there's a way. I mean, there were correspondence courses where you would literally snail mail assignments to a teacher someplace else, and they would snail mail back feedback to you and a grade and a certificate and all that kind of stuff. But even finding those resources back in the dark ages of the 1900s would have been so much more challenging. So I can see where that mindset comes from, but we can let it go now. Drop it.
Okay, can I just say I'm feeling so old because I didn't homeschool, but I definitely took a few classes and certifications that required snail mailing things back and forth.
Get
Like,
out.
no, I did that. I was there. So
I'm envisioning you
Oh,
like churning butter and the postman walks up and brings your certificate.
I mean, in school, we also churned butter, but that was just for a project, okay? Like, oh no. Uh, whew. All right. So listen, now for better or for worse, the world, it is at our fingertips
Mhm.
24/7. And we have options like online classes, both live or self-paced, asynchronous type things. You've got dual enrollment at community colleges in your local neighborhood. You have online college options, things like ASU, Study Hall, and Straighter Line. There's just so many options.
That's it. I mean, my kiddo is taking a pre-college course this summer that's aimed at recent high school graduates through Johns Hopkins. And they've got a handful of programs, but it's really cool because it's a hybrid of live and self-paced, which is great because some neurodivergent learners don't really do amazing with fully self-paced. So there are these little checkpoints and reassurances that are in there. I mean, there's just so many options out there.
There are other options. There are tutors, whether it's online tutors, there's so many options for online tutors, but there are in-person tutors. There are programs at the library with in-person tutors. There's just a lot of access to things like that. And then subject specialists, whether you are finding a local subject specialist to teach or to mentor, or maybe you're using a subject specialist through a program online like OutSchool or co-ops or micro schools. There are just so many ways to find people who know this thing and they just want to teach
Hmm.
kids to know this thing and they love it and they're passionate about it. Public school teachers do not have the market on knowing something and wanting to share it with people.
Hmm. But then you can, like, we've lived in Florida for so many years. There's FLVS, which is the Florida Virtual School, and there's a flex option where you can cherry pick classes from that. So if you are thinking, okay, I have this STEM kid who wants to go into something sciencey and I don't have a Bunsen burner, so what the heck am I going to do? You can sign them up. They actually go to the school after school hours for a lab with other FLVS kids, and they can do the coursework online and then the labs in person. Like, all this stuff exists. You don't have to invent this wheel all on your own. I've talked about, and we'll talk about it more in this episode, the fact that for me, homeschooling, especially in the older years, has been a lot more like being a project manager than a homeschool teacher. I am not equipped to teach the classes. Like when Amanda was like, you don't have to teach algebra, I'm like, that might be the only math I'm maybe equipped to teach, like algebra 1. Let's not get crazy. Okay. But I have a kid taking pre-calc this coming school year. Like, right? I mean, there's no way. And Amanda was like, you can get a curriculum with a teacher's guide. I'm like, there's no teacher's guide is helping me teach pre-calc. It is not happening. Okay. So I'm not teaching those things, but I'm finding those things. I have one taking a coding class, one learning intensive Portuguese and also learning fashion design, one who is in such an exceptionally high level of math and physics that I'm so ridiculously far behind him. It's not even funny. I sucked so badly at math in school. I still joke with the girl who used to sit next to me in school all the time because we were high school besties. And I was like, did you ever see me birthing a math genius on your bingo card of life? I mean, my husband's genes clearly kicked in there, which just goes to show you he could have done the taxes well if he wanted to the first time. But okay. Like, oh my God. Anyway, so it's not my job to teach these things, and that's totally fine. It's my job to make sure my kids learn them if that's part of their journey and part of their path. But I can research with the best of them. I can find resources. I can connect with tutors and educators. I know what kinds of questions to ask. I know how to screen them. I can find the people who can do that thing. So my job becomes coordinating dates and budgets and accommodation needs. If you have neurodivergent kids, making sure that your kid is in a safe space and that their needs are being met, course content, making sure that the course actually fulfills whatever it is that they're trying to accomplish. So I can make sure my kids have what they need without needing to learn calculus, which wouldn't even happen. So it's still time consuming. We've talked about it in other episodes, but in a very different role than sitting around the dining room table and cutting up a pie to teach fractions. It looks very different in the older years, and that's okay. And we should all be glad that these resources exist, because what you really need to homeschool high school, maybe you have the skills, maybe science is your forte and you're are not great with ELA or something like that. Okay, fine, teach the science part, do that part. But when it's not in your wheelhouse, the things that you need are resourcefulness and research skills to be able to go find things. You need the flexibility to be able to figure out how to piecemeal together the components that you need, trusting in your kids that they can do this too, and that you can partner with them and that you've built this relationship over time. And just this willingness to pivot. I mean, oh, we've had, and I'll talk about it a little bit more, but my oldest kiddo is kind of a little bit in this time and space where he's a little bit lost because all of the things that he's always been interested in doing and focused on and studying are all being replaced by AI. So we're very much in a pivot phase. It's funny because he's taking this class at Johns Hopkins about Python coding. And my dad worked in cybersecurity for many, many years. And my dad was like, I don't want to be negative, but I just really need you to know that Python code, to me, not to my kiddo, was like, just really need you to know that Python coding is like totally going to be replaced by AI. And if he wants job security, he needs to go into like cybersecurity or this or that or the other thing, because that's less. And I was, I know, but it's like, those are the things he likes. And so it's been a bit of a balancing act of trying to keep interest led, which is our jam, but also not be replaced by a robot in a year. So, right.
Well, yeah. And I mean, just last week we talked about exposure and depth versus breadth and all of that. But in high school, the content does get much deeper. As they get older, it gets deeper. That's just how it works. But the resources are plentiful. Yes, they can be expensive, but they don't have to be. Just like plenty of parents of public school kids or kids in private school feel like they are always paying for something else. There's something else they need to send a check in, or there's something else they have to Venmo for. There's always something else you can pay for as a homeschooler, but there are very few things that you have to pay for as a homeschooler. And I think that that's important to remember. The reality is some things do cost money. Okay. There are just going to be some things that do cost money, but there are also options to do things like trade skills or expertise with another parent. I mean, Megan would happily talk to my kiddo about World War II history for hours and hours on end. And look, I have very little interest in that specific area. And it's not really an area that I have much depth of knowledge, but I'll gladly let her take that over. And I can trade with her to help one of her kids write a research paper or work on some kind of an essay that they need for X, Y, or Z, because that's something that I'm more passionate about, the writing process and how to put that together and helping kids understand how to put that together and develop that. And I have a lot of experience with it. So resource swapping is definitely a viable option. And also, when you're getting into these kinds of scenarios where you're outsourcing, especially maybe to colleges for dual enrollment or online courses, you're getting into potential financial aid territory, which is definitely worth looking at. There are absolutely options that are free or really quite affordable. But if a course is simply out of reach because of the financial commitment, there are oftentimes assistance options available. It might be financial aid, it might be scholarships. There are a lot of scholarships that start for high school age. There's some that start at like 7th grade where you can start getting financial help to get more in-depth targeted classes and learning things for your kiddo. So don't just write those off. And I know you're listening and you're like, well, what are they? Like, we could spend an entire episode reading Google sources for you, but you can also just Google and pull up the tabs that look useful. There are books out there. There's one famous book that gets put out, I think, updated every year of all the things that are going to be available to apply for this year and things like that. Tons of
An
options.
episode about that book, like way back when. I know you're in chronic illness brain fog, so you might not remember, but we did like way back when. And it's like the size of a phone book. And it's got all these indexes at the back where you can look up by location, by ethnicity, by branches of the armed services. Like if your parents were in the service, like all this stuff. And then you can go find the things that correlate to those things. I found one in there one time for the grandchildren of Polish submariners. And I was like, okay, then. Yeah, I mean,
I,
there's a scholarship for everything.
That's it. There are so many really
Yeah.
unique, specific scholarships. And then, too, while we're on the topic of college courses, can we just take a quick side quest and say homeschool kids absolutely go to college? They also absolutely go to trade schools. They start businesses. They take gap years. Colleges often like homeschoolers because they tend to be more self directed. They have a better ability to take care of their education. I was just talking with someone who was like, well, my husband thinks that if my kid isn't in high school, then they won't be able to do college. And I was like, there is nothing about being in high school and being herded from one class to another when the bell rings that is equivalent to being on a college campus and having to go to class at 9 a.m. and then having like 3 hours off and then having to
Mhm.
like get yourself to your next class, like of your own volition and motivation. These are things you can specifically work on as homeschoolers that high school is not going to be helping them with.
Mm-mm.
Colleges often find that homeschoolers have unique experiences. My feed right now, and again, in large part because I'm in California, but we talk about the algorithm and what it's doing. Mine right now is full of all of these things saying, like, you know, you're at a disadvantage if you live in these zip codes. Your kid is one of 5,000 that has the exact same AP classes, the exact same GPA, the exact same extracurriculars, the exact same volunteer things, because the high schools all offer the same things, and all the kids wanting to get into specific colleges are all doing all of those exact same things that the public schools offer. This is your opportunity. As a homeschooler, you're not doing all of those things. It looks different. And the people who
Hmm.
are reading those applications, they want to see something that looks different. Like, okay, side quest done for at least now.
Side quest complete.
I would never claim it's complete, but at least done for now.
You're on pause. You're taking a gap here, a gap moment, right? Now, the really interesting thing, I was talking to a member of our Patreon community not that long ago, and I've heard this in other places, but it's fresh in my mind from chatting with her. This whole you're not qualified to teach high school when it really matters kind of thing is trickling down to middle school as well. And if you think about it, I think we really shouldn't be surprised by that, because another trend in education is pushing kids younger, harder and harder. I mean, we see this absolute fuckery that's going on in kindergarten and preschool now that is so age and developmentally inappropriate. What is being shoved on these littles is just, Peter Gray wrote about it and he called it abusive, I think. I mean, like it's not good. And this isn't just like Megan and Amanda's opinion. Like we have oodles of data telling us this. This is very, very clear. So like, should we be surprised that high school level seriousness is trickling down? No, because everything childhood is just shrinking, where it's like you must be better, harder, faster, more this, more that, younger and younger and younger. So now maybe you're not even qualified to teach middle school. Who knows? It's just bananas.
Yeah. I mean, I think too, depending on where you live, having lived in a lot of cities and worked in education in multiple cities, there is a concern about getting into a magnet high school or a really competitive high school, because in a lot of cities, you don't just go to a high school. You apply for high schools and they might be free, but you have to apply to different schools and then you get placed or you get options. It's kind of crazy, but it is what it is. And it's been that way for decades.
Mhm.
And so if you're worried about that, one of the things that often helps in that process is being in a feeder middle school.
Mhm.
And I hear that where I'm at a lot. People will be like, well, this is a good school, but where do your students usually go for high school? Do you feed a lot of students into these better high schools, or is it more like the mid-tier high schools, that sort of thing? And I think some parents or caregivers have concerns about how a teenager will handle the structure and pressures of a competitive program, like maybe an IB program or a rigorous high school, if they haven't already had some time to get used to that structure in middle school. And I mean, I think it makes sense, right? We have,
Yeah.
whether we like it or not, that high school transcript and GPA, it carries a lot of weight when it comes to getting into college. And so
Mhm.
if you are a parent or a caregiver who is looking towards college and that's your goal, and you're thinking about sending your kid to a brick and mortar high school for whatever reason, You're like, well, I don't want to send them there and have them totally struggle their freshman year and have it show up on their transcript as awful. So they better struggle in middle school where it's not on their high school transcript. It doesn't go on with them. Now, look, again, we can talk about all of these things, but obviously none of those things means that you need to send your kid to a brick and mortar school. Your teen does not need to go for these reasons. They don't need to start in middle school to make sure they're ready for high school. But it does mean that sometimes families feel the pressure to send their kids back to brick and mortar school in middle school instead of waiting until high school. And unfortunately, that can cause challenges for you and your kiddo when you choose to continue homeschooling. Like we mentioned before, it might mean that you have fewer in-person options. The upper middle school and high school level, there's definitely a lot fewer in-person classes, and it can feel like there are fewer curriculum options, online class options. It might also impact your kiddo's social circle. The friend pools can shrink. Now, look, my middle schooler's best friend is in public school. They've been best friends since kind of the end of kindergarten, maybe first grade. It does not mean that their friendships are doomed if some of the kids go back to brick and mortar school and your kiddo stays homeschooled. But it does mean that it's going to be different. There's going to be a transition. There's going to be a change. Different can be good or bad or just different, but it is still different. And this thinning of the homeschool ranks means it takes more intentionality from parents and caregivers to keep social circles alive. All right, so that's like the negative part that you're like, I know, and what am I supposed to do about it? I'm just going to send it to brick and mortar school. Okay, so we're not going to just leave you there. Some things to definitely look at or think about, to check into. You have co-ops, especially locally. You've got academic and social ones. Sometimes you can find virtual ones at the higher level, and that's where you need to go to make sure that it's something that clicks for your kid. But you might get lucky and find one that's local that they're like, this is totally my thing. You can do clubs, sports, theater. There are rec leagues. There are community theaters. A lot of places have rec centers that have regular things going on. And don't be afraid to think outside the box. Things like rock climbing. Yeah, that's not a high school extracurricular sport, but your kiddo might love it and they'll find other people who love it. And so great, why not? Or maybe arts and crafts. Maybe they did really get into a Ren fair and have decided to go all in on a crafting guild or, whatever. You can think outside the box and find stuff for them. Some of it they'll have same age peers. Some of it they'll be practicing that vertical socialization that we talked about before. Specifically social groups, things that don't necessarily have rock climbing or arts and crafts right behind them. Something else to look at. I know for us, our library has a lot of things. They have teen Dungeons and Dragons night. They have cooking classes that are specifically for teens. They have game nights. There's board game nights and video game nights. I know here locally, certain stores will have Dungeons and Dragons game night every Wednesday night. And some board game stores just have like, come in and play our games and see if you've got any on certain nights or on the weekend or whatever. Lots and lots of options. You might be able to find some teen book clubs at one of your local indie stores. And if they don't have one specifically for teens, talk to them about it. I know also for us locally, there's a teen monthly bonfire group. It's got no common interest other than the fact that they are happy to get together around a bonfire. And some of them are setting things on fire in the bonfire, and some of them are just making s'mores with the bonfire. But they come together once a month and they hang out. There's volunteering. Like I said before, brick and mortar schools are requiring a ton of community service hours for high schoolers. Because of that, there are loads of opportunities for teens, way more than you were able to find when you were like, I want to volunteer with my 7-year-old. And every organization was like, no, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Jobs, I know this is hit or miss. It's in some communities, in some areas, it's getting a lot harder to find jobs that teenagers can do and take on. And you have to be aware of the rules around ages and when kids can be working and things like that. But homeschool kids can still have high school teenage jobs. I worked at the movie theater when I was a teenager. Like, there are things.
Yeah.
And then again, online communities, there's nothing wrong with an online community. With balance, I mean, we're not looking to encourage our kids to become like totally sucked into some red pill creator online community, but there are absolutely healthy ways to really build amazing relationships with people online. Some of my best friends are online or came from online groups. And when I'm traveling and doing our world schooling and stuff, it's always fun to be able to be like, oh, I'm close. Do you want to get together for a coffee and make those connections?
Yeah. No, I totally love that. Right. And I hate to break it to you, but because all of us are talking all the time about how we're spread thin and we're tired and this, that, and the other thing, but sometimes you have to create the thing if it doesn't exist. I've had to do that multiple times where I hosted a Friday night teen gathering. And listen, it was as low lift as I could possibly get, where one Friday the kids met at Chipotle and had burritos and played board games. And then the next week they met at Panera and had soup and sandwiches and played board games. I was not organizing stuff where there were like prepayments and reservations and this, that, and the other thing, but the thing didn't exist and my kids were looking for stuff. And so I had to build the thing. And yeah, it sucks, but sometimes you have to build the thing. I'm sorry. But I think too, friendships start to look a little bit different because, you know, when they're little, it's like they run up to another kid on the park. They're like, nice sneakers. You want to see how fast I can run? And then it's like, okay, we're best friends. But then as teenagers, they form connections on deeper levels, whether it's because of a great conversation or commonalities and things like that. They know a little bit more about who they are. Most teenagers are still very confused about who they are, and that's totally age appropriate, but they can find friends that they connect with in meaningful ways so much differently than they did when they were younger. And I think they start to realize that they don't need a birthday party that's 25 kids at a bouncy house place, but, you know, 3 kids coming over for pizza and a movie is meaningful and fulfilling in so many ways. So I think friendships look different too when there's a teen circle going on. Too many teens in one place, I speak from experience, sometimes not always the best thing. My best friend growing up, her mom had this thing that was nothing good ever happens after 10 p.m. So sometimes the same can be said for teenagers. Like, you know, above 6, things start to get risky. Sometimes that herd mentality takes over a little bit when you have large groups of teenagers, but for the most part, it's okay. But it can happen. So small groups is not something to downplay.
Yeah, well, and I mean, that's it. We talk about it all the time in groups, but at some point, a lot of kids naturally make a transition from loads of quote unquote friends that are truly just acquaintances and play buddies
Mhm.
to, you know, a handful of really good friends that get them and they understand and they want to put their focus there. And it's normal.
Mhm.
It's like it's not abnormal to not do that, but it's normal to
Yeah.
transition that way or move into that. And so there's no need to worry about that.
Mhm.
Okay, so I do think that before we wrap up for the day, it would be really helpful for each of us to dig into some specifics because it's really frustrating when you're listening to something and you're like, okay, these are all great ideas, but what does that actually look like for you? And we're not, again, we never try to say like you have to homeschool like me or you have to homeschool like Megan, and that's the right way, but it can be helpful to see what it actually looks
Mhm.
like for other people. Again, right? Recap, I'm homeschooling a middle schooler, and Megan, as she said, is living a whirlwind of high school and college with her kids. I think it's great when we talk about high level trends, but let's get into like the nitty gritty. So we're going to talk a little bit about like how we prepare for the school year, where we're finding resources, what hurdles are in the mix, all of those sorts of things. But before we dive into that, we do just want to remind you really quickly that in addition to like super personalized coaching sessions where it's just you and us and we go really deep and personal, we do have live meetings multiple times every month over on Patreon. They tend to be small and cozy in a good way. So you can bring questions about homeschooling, high school, or anything else on your mind. And we'll share our thoughts, and other community members will chime in as well. It's just a really nice, supportive environment. And every once in a while, we'll have a lot of people where it gets a little hard to make sure everyone gets a chance to talk. But we have enough different events and different types of things that usually it's a small enough group, everyone gets a chance to talk and we can be really supportive. So we'd love to see you over there.
Mhm.
I will say you can check the show notes for the link and a coupon code. Unfortunately, Patreon doesn't allow us to have a coupon code that just never expires. So if you're listening to this like way down the road, hi, welcome, we're glad you're here. But also that code is not going to work. It's probably going to be expired. So just comment on this episode or send us a DM through Facebook or Instagram, and we can send you the current code, whatever one we happen to have rolling at that time. It gives you 90% off your first month. So if you join the highest level where you get all of the live meetings, works out to like $2 for your first month. So it's a really affordable way to come in and test the waters and meet some new friends and see if it's a vibe that really works for you. Yeah, hopefully it will. I mean, it's a really awesome group. I really enjoy seeing them. And if you come, bring all your questions. We're really happy to help in that situation. It won't be like a full 60-minute, just you kind of thing, but we'll definitely answer what we can.
Yeah.
All right. So let's do specifics. I'm Amanda. If you're listening instead of watching and you're like, oh, their voices are kind of the same, I can't tell for sure. So I'm Amanda. I'm the aggressive academic homeschooler between the two of us. I am homeschooling a 12-year-old. Now, I'm going to put this out there. He is 2E, which means twice exceptional. And that specifically means that he is diagnosed as both gifted and having another type of neurodivergence. In our case, he's got a couple other types of neurodivergence going on, but the biggest one being a learning disability. And also, yes, he is actually gifted. There was recently a lot of discussion online about whether or not my kiddo, I just think he's special and amazing and therefore must be gifted. He's diagnosed as being gifted. And I say this not to brag, but so that you understand he is working at his own pace. And that pace is not a pace I expect for anyone else. I will say he doesn't have a clear focus or specific path for himself. So he's all over the place in a lot of ways, but he's working at a much more advanced pace than I would ever be like, oh, your kiddo is not already doing this at this age. Mine is. Like, that's not fair. And I want you to understand that when you're listening to me talk about these things. Even though he doesn't know exactly what he wants to do, he does plan to attend university and he's talking about getting a PhD. I absolutely never, ever, 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 ever considered getting a PhD for myself, but I'm happy to be his biggest cheerleader. So a lot of what we're doing is kind of with that in mind. I feel pretty confident that I can still be the primary teacher for ELA, social studies, and history. I don't like to go into the same depth that he likes, but I can absolutely continue finding courses and own voices, books, and decolonized perspectives and making sure that he's getting a well-rounded history. And I'm learning a ton with him. Like, no, I'm not reading the 400-page biography about dictators that he wanted, but I am watching videos and we're talking about it and he's cluing me in on things and stuff like that. So I think that's working pretty well. I could probably handle science at this level too, but he's really happy with an online asynchronous class. He really likes Science Mom right now. And so I'm fine with letting him rock that out. That's going to have to change soon. Like Megan was saying before, if you don't have a Bunsen burner, we live in a condo building. And so if anything were to go horribly wrong, like no one wants anything to go horribly wrong in their home, but it would be far better for it to go horribly wrong in a standalone home as opposed to like a $100 million building. We'll be outsourcing that, going somewhere else for the Bunsen burner activities. Math is definitely more of a struggle. If you have been listening for the last year, you know that we have really struggled with the transition away from Beast Academy with what to do next. He really wanted to do art of problem solving. So he is doing that for pre-algebra. And I'm going to be honest, I tutored pre-algebra and algebra back when I was in university, but at least 50% of art of problem solving pre-algebra is beyond my comprehension. I don't understand why they do it that way. We're trying to teach an old dog new tricks and it's not working. We're currently doing a combination of their online self-paced asynchronous class and then me as the teacher with the textbook and the answer key. It's not going to last much longer. It can't. It is not sustainable. And so we're definitely looking at our options for next year. We're going to try to finish this up, but we're also going to trial a couple of other options for maybe a month at a time and then revisit which curriculum we think is best for moving forward. That's how we do things in our home for the most part. If it's working, great. When it stops working, it's time to try a few different things for these kind of little, free trials, though they're not always free trials because I feel like a week isn't enough to know for sure if it's going to work. It's enough to know if it really doesn't work,
Hmm.
but it's not enough to know for sure that it's going to work.
And it's not like
So
a honeymoon phase.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Exactly. So we try to do it around a month for the most part before we decide for sure that we're going to switch and buy a full year's worth of curriculum for something. We have been encouraged by a few people to start really looking into college classes for him in his strongest areas, which are ELA, history, and social studies type stuff. I'm not sure that either of us is actually ready for that. I said definitely not before he was 12. He's 12 now. He's writing a couple years above traditional grade level, but like I said, I'm just not sure that he's ready or maybe really willing to take on the full workload that would come with college level classes. So, I mean, that's fine. He's 12. And I feel like this comes up a lot like, oh, at what age did your kids start their dual enrollment classes? When
Yeah.
did you take your first ASU universal class? And like there's like a little bit of a badge of honor it doesn't really need to be that, right? Like if your kid enjoys it, great. If not, okay, fine, whatever. My kid was 100% the kind of kid who would happily soak up all the lectures, but never turn in a single assignment. And in an ideal world, I'd roll over to our local university and be like, can my kid just sit in on all of your lectures? I've looked, they don't allow that.
You used to be able to audit stuff.
Yeah, a
Yeah.
lot of schools have taken that option away, especially for younger kiddos. So that's a little bit of a struggle for us. But the flip side is there are so many places and ways that you can get that information on YouTube and from other providers, masterclass and things like that, where he can learn just loads and loads of stuff without having to do assignments. And at this point, that's fine. At some point, he's going to have to figure out how to do assignments if he really does plan to get that PhD. But that's okay. We're not there yet. I will say my bigger concern, like we kind of talked about in this episode, is the friends piece. This past year, he stopped doing his weekly drop off class. He had his reasons. I respected them and supported his decision. But I also said that he had to find a few new drop off things to try, things where he's going out with other tweens or teens without me around. They have to at least be hanging out somewhere where I'm not right there keeping an eye on them. So far, we've got chess club, small group golf lessons, and a monthly Dungeons and Dragons game. All of them have an adult there present for oversight, which I'm struggling to find a way that we can remove that piece where it's just teens and tweens hanging out. It's hard. It's hard to find those things and to find the right fit. We also have a regular weekly park date with some friends. And on most weekends, he hangs out with his BFF, like I said, who is in public school Monday to Friday. They're good. We have struggled because we live in the city. We have struggled to find good opportunities to be like, go without adults nearby. So, yeah, we'll see. And then I will say, I kind of mentioned it on a previous podcast, but my kiddo has also recently started playing Pokemon in person. I thought that was going to be a great opportunity for making friends, but he is the youngest there by a lot of years.
That stinks.
So it is good practice for him.
Yeah.
He's practicing starting random conversations with people. He's learning how to chat with people of all ages, but he's definitely not going to be invited out for a beer with the guys after game night anytime soon. So you win some, you lose some.
That's hard. I mean, my kids play Pokemon, and when you go to the big events, there's thousands of kids there. So
Yeah.
they're playing at locals, just not at that's what it's called. I don't know if you've gotten the lingo down, but locals are just like your casual. And so they're playing at locals, just not your locals, which sucks, but
Just not any of the ones that I can actually easily get to. Right.
yeah.
Which, I mean, and it is what it is. But
Hmm.
it's not a total loss. Like I said, he's learning some good skills and
Yeah.
It's the only thing we have going right now where there's not like specifically a grown up overseeing it all, but he's being left to his own devices to navigate social situations and have conversations and do all of that. So it's still good.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's what we have going on. How about you, Megan? I feel like I talked a lot, but not in a bad way. You're going to have even more to talk about because you got 3 kids to cover
Oh,
instead of
great.
just one.
Yeah, exactly. So I'll go as quickly as possible without overwhelming people, hopefully. Things are good. Things are busy, but good. As always, busy. I mean, that's just it. I mentioned earlier that I'm kind of seeing the light at the end of the tunnel when it comes to my summer and fall planning. So that's good. But anyway, I have a few disclaimers before I start. Okay. So Amanda said, academic aggressive homeschooler. I am not that thing. I am an intentional unschooler. If you missed last week's episode, go listen to that thing. I talked a bit more about what that looks like. So my kids' pathways will look very much differently than Amanda's kids' pathways and yours potentially, and that's okay. It's all good. I will say the friends piece has also been a challenge for us. We've moved a bunch of times for my husband's job, which is one thing. Then there's other things like my youngest is a 2E kiddo as well. And he finds teenagers his age loud and ridiculous. I mean, he can't. They're too much for him. And the level of conversation, he's an intellectual snob. I've always said it, but it makes it hard. It doesn't make it any easier. There's a really solid teen group that's here that there's a WhatsApp channel for, but a lot of teenagers, I said before, don't know who they are. And a lot of them are struggling with confidence and self-identity, and they're pushing boundaries, which, as the therapist tells me, is what teens are supposed to do. And so that's all great, except when you have 20 of them together and they're all pushing boundaries together and they're all bringing their own insecurities and issues together and stuff. Teen socials can be, it's an interesting bunch. So it's a lot to navigate. I am always willing to open my own home because my parents were like that when I was younger. My parents were like, you can invite anybody over. We'll feed them. We would rent movies at Long Valley Video. Please be kind, rewind. But I'm like, listen, I'll order pizza, like all of that. I'm like, invite kids over. You want to play Uno, whatever. Cause at least if they're like here, I leave them alone, but I've still got an ear on what's going on. And we live in Europe. The drinking age is much, much younger here. Everything is less taboo here than it is in the United States. So some of those boundaries that might exist in the United States are not in place here. So yeah, it's been an interesting ride from that perspective, but there you go. There's no way I can tell you about my school planning without acknowledging the absurd amounts of privilege wrapped up in my planning. And I will fully admit that. And to Amanda's point earlier, there are so many different pathways. This is our pathway because I can. If you cannot, it does not mean your child is doomed. It doesn't mean that their experience is lesser than, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I promise if you ever come to a coaching session with me, I can give you suggestions that work for any budget, not what I am willing to spend and not tell my husband about. So who did just send me a message. He very rarely looks at credit card statements. He kind of just pays things, and sent me a text like a couple of weeks ago. And I was like, is this a standard amount that we pay for OutSchool every month? And I was like, yeah, we've been doing that for years, but he just figured it out. So hopefully he'll forget about it soon. But yeah. Okay. Another thing I want to say is if you're new to homeschooling, you might hear our plans or even Amanda's plans and be like, oh my God, her kids are ahead in everything. Is this how homeschooling works? And to that, I would say a few things, because we did just get wrapped up in some conversation that was like, do your kids have to be geniuses to homeschool? And it's like, no. But here's the thing. My kids are all wildly neurodivergent, like wildly neurodivergent. Okay. And so last week in our unschooling discussion, we talked about how that overlap is great for neurodivergent kids because it allows them to go super deep into things that they love. So my kids have been home for 10 years and they've been free for 10 years to go really, really deep. So this didn't happen overnight. This is 10 years of them being like, I am obsessed with this thing and I'm going to read everything there is to read about it and watch every movie and go to this museum and do this thing. Okay. So I think that's part of it. But then I also think part of it is homeschooling in general, definitely unschooling, but homeschooling in general allows you to differentiate learning like mad to meet your kids where they're at. So I think the longer people have been homeschooling their kids, certain kids, not all kids, certain kids will be wildly ahead maybe not across the board, probably not across the board, but in certain areas, because those are the areas that they love. And part of what we love about homeschooling is you can meet your kids where they're at. They're not being held back by a group of 20 other kids. So if it's history or if it's math, these kids might be perfectly average in other subject areas, but you're focusing in on the one thing that they're like 7 grade levels ahead on because they've been free to do that thing and we've been free to accommodate that interest of theirs. So I think that that makes a really big difference as well. Rarely are kids wildly ahead like that across the board. There are other people who are differentiating and meeting their kids where they're at because their kids have learning challenges or have learning differences. And in traditional environments, sometimes there's embarrassment that comes with struggling with certain areas. And that doesn't exist in the homeschooling world. Meet your kids where they're at. If that's 5 grade levels ahead or 5 grade levels behind, that is totally fine. That's the beauty of homeschooling, is that you can do those things.
I think that's such an important point, because we're sitting here and I'm talking and I flippantly threw out that my kiddo is only a couple grade levels ahead in writing. And so I feel like he's maybe not ready to tackle college level writing yet. But also, if you haven't been a long-time listener, you don't know that in 4th grade, we had a real breaking point. And I finally found a writing curriculum that worked for my kiddo because it has been an area of struggle. And we went back to 2nd grade. We were halfway through for 4th grade, and I bought stuff that was labeled for 1st and 2nd grade. And we started at the 2nd grade level of stuff, and we just consistently worked through it. I coach people all the time for curriculum, and they're going, my kiddo is just really struggling with the writing curriculum at this grade level, and it's so hard. And I'm like, so then don't do it. If it is so hard, if all you're doing is butting heads over it, go back a grade level, go back 2 grade levels, find the point where it works, and then just work forward from there, because you are at home and you are working with your kiddo and you're helping them progress at the rate that works for them. And again, not always, but a lot of the time, they're gonna progress at a faster rate than just a grade level per academic school year. If you are finding something that actually really works for them and makes sense in their head and makes sense in their world, and that they're not fighting over doing, you know, 2 years ago, my kiddo was in 2nd grade writing, and now he's writing at a much higher level because we were able to find what worked and do all of that. And I'm not saying everyone is going to go 6th grade levels in 2 years, but it's not incredibly unheard of when you are at home and able to find what works for them and able to work with them. It's a partnership. And when you find the right pieces and the right rhythm, it really will go much better the vast majority of the time.
Yeah. And if you did that and you bought 1st and 2nd grade material and they did progress at even a half a grade level per calendar or academic year, that's fine too. It's totally fine. So yeah, don't stress.
That's it. Progression, progress. 2 steps forward, 1 step back. As long as they're progressing, wherever you have to start at, as long as they're progressing, that's what you're working on. Because if they were in a brick and mortar situation, especially a public school situation where they were falling behind, the chances of them actually consistently progressing are very slim. So if you've brought them home and they are consistently progressing at whatever pace, and you know for sure that they are building on skills and doing better, that's a win. And
You're
it's
ahead.
a win they probably wouldn't see in a traditional school.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So I started out by saying we are unschoolers. And so that means that the things that we focus on, especially at this point, we're very differentiated at this point because my kids are getting ready to adult. So they're focusing on things that they're going to plan to use in adult life. So for example, like one of my kids that I'll tell you about, and it's like, oh, okay, they're like way ahead in this and that and the other thing, struggles wildly with reading comprehension because of neurodivergence and needs to take in information in atypical ways in order for the information to actually stick because of the speed at which their brain and the processing and the whole thing. Okay, fine. So yeah, I'm not telling you about a reading comprehension class that they're taking because they have found workarounds for that thing that work just fine for them. And so it's like, oh my gosh, our kids are ahead on everything. No, not reading comprehension, not that thing. We just found a workaround for it. So in the unschooling world, you're going to hear people whose kids are so far ahead because they're focused on things that they love. And guess what? As human beings, we're pretty good at the things that we love most of the time. None of us love a thing that's like a constant slugfest, or it's like difficult and challenging and frustrating. So part of that lends itself to our style of schooling. So the other thing that I'll say is, if you're new to the idea of unschooling, first of all, go listen to last week's episode, but you might be like, what about core subjects? Where is all this stuff happening? What's going on here? So last week I said, and I'll do it again this week, I'll add an excerpt to the show notes, or a link to an excerpt from a book that I co-wrote with my daughter called Unschooling from Both Sides of the Story, where she described how she learned core subjects through interests, because she's very strong in math. She's very strong in science, like all of these things, but she didn't take traditional science classes. So, okay. Now, my first kiddo, my oldest kiddo, who's 18, I will say, it was funny because when you said that you have a kid who would gladly attend all the lectures but never turn the assignments in, that's this kiddo, right? And in my notes, I wrote it differently, but I was like, yes, that's the thing. He just enjoys learning. Like, he wants to take this Python class. And my dad is like, that's going to be replaced by AI. It's not a career path or whatever. And he's like, but I just want to learn it because I'm interested in it. And for us, especially as unschoolers, I'm like, great, you should just learn things because you're interested in them. It doesn't necessarily need to have a pathway to practical application. That's okay. You can just enjoy learning. So there's a place in North Carolina called John C. Campbell Folk School, and you can go there and learn like all these different trades and stuff like that. And that's kind of how he views learning. Like, he's like, I want to show up to university and take this one class because I think this one class is, I don't want to take the rest of the classes, and I don't want to do that as a job. I just want to take that one class. Like, for him, that's interesting. And I'm like, okay, that works. So he's technically a homeschool graduate. He did 3 semesters of university in the US in machine tool technology, also on the list of jobs to replace by AI. So there you go. So it has wreaked some havoc in his next step planning, because he's like, I loved my classes and I found it super interesting, but clearly I'm probably not going to do that as a career. So now what, kind of thing. He's not quite ready to leave home yet, which is fine. I also was not ready to leave home at 18. I didn't leave home till 20. I did community college until I felt ready to leave. So for now, he is working. He's got a little part-time online job, and he's traveling, which is great. He's never been a human being who is rushed. He's the human epitome of Snuffleupagus from Sesame Street. So he likes to move slowly and then not leap in, not jump in, but kind of slide in when he feels ready. So he's not ready, and I'm okay with that because that's his personality. It always has been. So he's reading a ton, he's working, he's exploring interests, he's 3D printing, he's traveling, he's investing. His days are full, and he's traveling all over the world playing Pokemon. So he's a very happy camper. So he's going to Prague in a few weeks. He's quite thrilled about that. This summer, he's taking the class at Johns Hopkins. So that's been logistics, it's application, it's transcript, it's letters of recommendation from teachers that he's had for outsourced things. And then his plan for the fall is to take a pretty intensive 9-month Python course that goes deeper. This one over the summer is the prereq to the fall one. And as I mentioned, my dad is like, but again, I'm okay with learning things because you love learning, right? Like, he's 18. He lives at home for free. He doesn't need to have his whole life figured out. It's okay. I mean, if he was sitting at home rotting, that would be one thing, but he's not. He's being productive and he's learning stuff and he's living a sparked life. So I'm like, live your sparked life. It'll click into place eventually. You'll get there. He's going to the same summer camp this summer that he has for years. So that's great. That's a solid social outlet. It's all unschooled teenagers that come from all over the world. They go to camp. He's actually doing 2 sections of camp, one in Oregon, one in Vermont, and then camping in between with some friends from camp, like, because now they're all 18, so they can do that thing. So they're going to go camp elsewhere and then go to the next section of camp. So he's basically camping for the month, and he'll be as happy as a clam. I mentioned that he's working and he's got a contract position. So I have him set up with my dad right now to understand things about taxes and stuff. Because before my dad went into auditing, his background is in financial and cost accounting. So, because auditing didn't exist when my dad went to school, cybersecurity was not a thing. So that was his transition later. So my dad's teaching him how taxes work as a 1099 person. You have to set up an IRS account. You have to pay quarterly taxes, or there's a penalty fee. And he has investments and stuff like that too. So life skills. So he's good. And it's just a matter of kind of putting his pieces into place.
Dude, I need your dad. I just this week, I like finally got it set up and was like, I have to bite the bullet and set up this quarterly estimated taxes payment thing. Like
Yeah.
it took me months and so much research trying to figure out what the hell I was doing. An excellent example of the fact that like you have to learn your whole life.
Okay, then you have my daughter, totally different kid than the older one. It's amazing how they're all so completely different. As an only child, it still blows my mind how different three humans who were all raised in the same environment can be. It blows my mind. So anyway, she loves college, loves college, which Aiden does too, but she loves it because the depth of the material is so much deeper than what she can get. So a lot of unschoolers, it's like, oh, they're signing up for this online class through like Skillshare, or they're watching someone on YouTube who's like an expert in that thing. She's so well beyond that in her field. There's no more resources that are just being handed out or offered as like a 6-week asynchronous course. That doesn't exist anymore. And she was so hungry for a depth of information that wasn't available anymore. So she actually started college. It was a 2-year college at 12, which was so funny because when she applied, it said you had to be 18 to apply. And she said, I'm not 18, but they never asked. So I taught her how to apply, and I was like, you're going to need to kill that fly with a sledgehammer. I said, you're going to need to go in with letters of recommendation from people that you've worked with and all this kind of stuff so that you can overcome the age objection before it comes up, kind of thing. But she was so hungry for the information. So P.S., they found out she was 12. She still got in. They actually gave her a scholarship. So it all worked. She loves conferences. She's an artist, so she likes conferences that are specialized in her field because really it brings together like the best people in this field, in this industry, and they're all info sharing in these sessions and over, casual conversations in an expo hall or in the hotel lobby late at night. She loves that stuff. So her summer and next year look like she's got an internship that she's currently doing. And all of this is, again, it's like life coaching from behind. Like, what sort of things should I put in the application? Or can you read my application and see if you think I struck the right tone? And I have an interview, and how should I explain homeschooling in the interview? Kind of having these conversations. But it's with a company here that does upcycling to prevent waste of scrap fabrics and dead stock. So she's having fun with that. The main reason she did it was to make friends who have common interests as her and to build her resume. So it's been good. It's started, and they have events this weekend and stuff. So she'll be having some fun. Language skills. She started a new program today, actually, because she's been doing 15 hours a week of intensive Portuguese classes. But I found somebody who does conversation at local cafes. So they met today at a place and they just chat, because it's so different to learn a language in a classroom where you're conjugating verbs versus to have to actually pull all that word soup together in your brain and spit it out in a conversation. And she's been struggling with that part a little bit more. So now she has that. And again, when we talk about the invisible labor, it's like scheduling with this person every week. And then we have a thing that's kind of like Venmo. I have to pay her and all this kind of stuff, but it's going well for her. And then she has her more formal Portuguese lessons as well. She's prepping for university in the fall. The paperwork for that was absolutely batshit insane. Talk about project management. I talked about it for like weeks because I had to go to like 6 tax offices to get a piece of paper that I needed for her registration. So that was fun. She writes for magazines that are related to her artistic field. And so she does a quarterly proposal to different magazines. They give a prospectus of what they're looking for a particular issue. And so I'm involved in that with like the proofreading and stuff like that, making sure she's like striking the correct tone, kind of perceiving what other people might submit and trying to figure out how to stand out or make hers different and all of that kind of stuff. So she's got one that she's working on right now and submitted one a couple of weeks ago. She's presenting this summer she's going to 2 conferences this summer that are within her artistic field. They're both conferences that happen every other year. So there was not one last year. There is this year. At one, she's presenting. She's actually teaching 2 courses. She's teaching one on sewing and finishing seams with hand woven fabrics. So she has to bring a ton of fabric samples and handouts and have a PowerPoint. So she's got that going on. And then she's the chair of a committee for the other one that she's going to. So I'm just involved in that from the background as far as like, how do you think I should communicate this thing to this person? Because it's all new to them. Like, we take for granted how easy it is for so many of us to just like fire off an email that strikes the right tone and communicates things clearly and stuff. And that's all new. This is their first time doing this stuff in a lot of cases. So I'm managing that kind of stuff from the background. And then my youngest kiddo, who out of all my kids prefers the most traditional coursework, like the other 2 really enjoy that level of academia. But this kid enjoys the formal process of learning in a way that you wouldn't expect from an unschooler, perhaps. Like Amanda's kiddo, he is also talking PhD. And I'm like, have at it, pal. Have the best time ever. So he is technically starting high school this fall. He'll be 15 in the fall. And I set out to lay out a 4-year plan, and then instead ended up laying out a 2-year plan that's pretty solid with a bunch of options for the last 2 years, figuring as he does these first 2 years, he'll figure out even more of what he likes and what he doesn't like and what direction he might want to take. And then for those last 2 years, we've got this whole pool of options, and he can kind of pick from there and be like, okay, this is where I want to get even more granular with certain things. And I felt really happy because I sent it to Amanda, who's more academic aggressive, obviously, than I am. And I was like, does this make any sense? And she's like, that's totally what I would have done. And I was like, yes, I got it. So that was good. That was exciting. He's changing his math tutor, which was huge and took weeks and weeks and weeks of conversation because kiddo does not like change. His old math tutor, he absolutely adored, but he's also West Coast, like Amanda, 8 hours time difference for us. And its scheduling is just really, really hard. So he now has somebody who's in the US, but East Coast. So 5 hours is much more doable for us. And she also teaches physics. So he's going to be with her next year, 2 hours a day. So he's in the fall going to be with her 2 hours a day, Monday through Friday, one-on-one, so that he can work at his own pace. And he's taking honors physics 2 with her and pre-calculus. And then over the summer, he's taking with her one-on-one introduction to number theory. And I ordered his textbook yesterday, and I sent the receipt to Amanda because it cost me as much to ship the book as it did to buy the book. So I was like, okay, then. Thankfully, this summer, I will be in the US and I can buy his books for the fall and just bring them back to Europe with me. For him, hand selecting teachers is essential. All my kids are neurodivergent. This kiddo has the highest support needs. So all of his teachers are neurodivergent. He does not work with neurotypicals. He doesn't understand them. He doesn't want to hang out with them. So, right. So the thought process is similar this way. The communication is smoother. It all works much, much better. He has a very limited number of spoons to offer up in a day. We've talked about the spoon theory basically being like your battery bank or your energy bank. His spoon quantity is very, very low. So this for him is a full course load. He can only really do a handful of things per day. So for years now, things like his ELA skills have been incorporated into his math, where he's defending arguments, writing proofs, things like that, because he can't do additional things. Like he even gave up his chess classes that he liked because he was like, I can't, I'm too done by the end of the day. My brain is done. And I'm like, okay, that's the flexibility of homeschooling, right? So yeah. And then this summer he's going to camp. I suggested all these splash in a river and sit around a bonfire at night kind of camps because my older kid loves those. And he was like, absolutely not. There is no way on this green earth that you're sending me to go splash in a river with other teenagers. And I was like, okay, then. So I found a camp that is math and physics, which like would not be my choice as a fun summer plan. But he's going to England and he'll travel there solo back and forth. Huge life skill moment. He's very familiar with England. We've spent a lot of time there. He'll be in a dorm. He will have independent meals where he has to go make sure he's fed. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I will be sending him with a whole thing of like backup snacks in case he can't find something to eat, and all that kind of stuff will be taken care of. And we've already talked to their accommodations team to make sure that he'll be sorted out. But yeah, so it's just been a lot of logistics of meeting with his admissions counselor, and he had to submit like a personal statement for an application and blah, 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 blah. So yeah, it's totally possible. It's a lot of time finding these resources and asking the questions and having the meetings and setting up the payment plan if it's a thing. So it's totally possible. And you also don't have to homeschool high school that way. That's the way we've chosen to do it because we're weird and quirky and I can, but you don't have to. You could totally stay in your town and rock homeschooling high school in one place because there's so much stuff online that you're good to go there too. So, but for us, that's the way it has been looking. So yeah. So listen, we edit our episodes down because we always end up chatting in between and we never start talking for the episode. The moment we hit the record button, we end up being like, oh, by the way, I forgot to tell you. But even looking at the counter going right now and knowing that we're going to edit this down, this was long. And so we hope you found it beneficial if you stuck through the whole thing and know that you can homeschool high school and middle school, but don't leave just yet.
All right. So we have a mantra this week. You don't need to know everything to homeschool high school. You just need to stay engaged, use the resources available, and keep showing up.
That's the key. You can do it. You've got this. All right, friends. So come chat with us anytime you need extra support. You have questions, come hang out. We're happy to help. But in the meantime, happy homeschooling.
Have a great one.